Da-da-da. It's gonna say nothing.
All right, so we're going to check our results.
Okay, check away.
Are you ready?
Our is just a collective bargaining
I
agreement.
should have figured out how this works before you decided to
This is kind of magical.
Oh,
34.4% Ashkenazi Jewish.
Whoa. Yep.
It's
Well,
not-
it
in
means
fact,
that
it's-
probably one of his parents
To be
was
precise, it's
full
9%.
Jewish,
And one
and
was
the
like a
other
little
one
bit
was partially Jewish.
Even more than
Wow,
German.
we're more Jewish than we
We're
are.
more.
How's that possible?
It just means that mom, because where mom is from in Germany too, can have a lot of French and other influences. Can you go back to that? That's what I've heard of a lot of German.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the vlog. My name is Tommy Grimes and I vlog about people, places, and things that I love from the city of brotherly love to the city of angels. On my last vlog, I revealed my DNA test results from Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, and Family Tree DNA. They all showed I'm between 34 to 41% Jewish. Now I gave a little bit of an explanation as to why I started this whole process. My father was adopted and I'm trying to track down his biological family. But today, I wanted to give you a little bit more of the whole story about a man with Jewish ancestry, of uncertain parentage, a preacher, carpenter, from Nazareth, Pennsylvania. My dad, James Grimes. And to help me tell the story, I am going to FaceTime call my family back on the East Coast. Actually, what do you say we drop in on them in Philly? As a kid, I was obsessed with Jurassic Park. That's where I first heard about the chaos theory. You know how a butterfly can flap its wings in one part of the earth, and it sets in motion a chain of inevitable events that lead to a hurricane on the other side of the world. That's kind of what it's like retracing my family's story.
Really?
Except in our case, it was a mosquito's wings. It all started with the man whose name I bear, Thomas Grimes, #1, my grandfather.
Grandpa Grimes was born in Paris, Texas in 1918.
Sorry, Paris, Texas. No, we put his hand over his heart and said, God bless Texas.
Grandpa Grimes was in the Army. He was a foot soldier, but he was with Patton's brigade, which was tanks. He started in Africa, North Africa, and then they went up through Italy and into France to liberate France.
I believe in Sicily and Northern Africa.
Sicily? Really, Mom?
He told me
Why did
things that he
get
didn't
so
tell
wrong?
everybody else.
Now, even though my grandfather was fighting Nazis, it turned out his most deadly adversary was a mosquito.
Grandpa Grimes got sent home because he had malaria.
From the stories that I heard from both of them, he was stationed at a mental hospital, Army hospital on Long Island. And he and his buddies went into Patchogue regularly, I guess, and one day they went to a photography studio to get their pictures taken. And while they were there, they asked the owner of the studio if there was any good-looking girls. And he said that if they kept their eye on the doorway and a curtain, that pretty soon a good-looking redhead would come through. And that was your Grandma Lila Grimes.
And he told me he fell in love with her right away.
And they went to the USO dance after Thanksgiving dinner, and that night he walked her home, and they dated. He came every night for a month. He would take the bus from the hospital into Patchogue, and they would take walks. They saw each other regularly for a whole month. They met November 25th at Thanksgiving, and on December 25th, Christmas of that same year, they got engaged. That on March 25th, they got married that same year. So they knew each other about 4 months from the time they met to the time they got married. They were told that it was because of Dad's malaria from the high fever. He was unable to have children because of that.
Because Grandpa had a war injury and was
What's his war injury?
infertile. No one ever said.
Even though my grandfather couldn't have kids, they still wanted a family. First, they adopted my Aunt Nina, and soon after decided they also wanted to adopt a son. On January 22nd, 1954, a boy was born in Brooklyn. He was given up for adoption.
We knew he was in foster care until he was about 18 months old, and that he had had a high fever and was partially deaf in 1 ear from being in foster care.
On December 10th, 1956, Tom and Lila officially adopted my dad. They kept his first name James and raised him with lots of love in Patchogue, New York. They didn't tell him much about his biological family.
We were always told, he was told that he was born in Brooklyn. And one day, after I was in the picture, she sat us down and told us that his mother put him up for adoption, and that he was put up for adoption because his mother was married and had other children, and she had had an affair with a merchant marine, and that was why he was adopted. She said that his background was English and German.
After my father graduated high school, he moved down to Philly. There he attended Philadelphia College of Bible, where he began his studies to become an evangelical pastor. In his junior year, he was given the chance to study abroad in Israel. I still remember hearing stories about him living on a kibbutz, working on an archaeological dig, and learning Hebrew. It crystallized his love for the country and started a lifelong obsession with Jewish culture and tradition. It was one of the most impactful experiences of his young life, and he would eventually return several times throughout the years. When he returned to Philly, he met my mother, Susan. And how would I describe her? She's a Pennsylvania Dutch farm girl from the Lehigh Valley. From there, the Grimes family bounced around the country and grew. Mom and Dad lived in Oregon and had baby number 1, Carrie. Then back to my dad's hometown on Long Island and had babies 2 and 3, Stacy, and then me, because they were obviously saving the best for last. I also got the honor of being named after my grandpa. Then we moved to a small town north of Pittsburgh until June 1991.
That time in our service when we offer praise to the Lord, where we share with each other what He's been doing in our lives, and maybe this morning we can center on what our dads have meant to us, what they've done for us, how they've helped us. Maybe you have testimony for that this morning.
This is actual footage of my dad's last sermon at Calvary Baptist. Soon after, we set off to achieve my dad's lifelong dream of becoming a church planter and starting his own church. So he moved the family across the great state of Pennsylvania to a small town close to my mom's family. It was called Nazareth. No, I didn't make it up. Nazareth is a real place, and it's also right next to another town called Bethlehem. We're famous for guitars, race car drivers, one half of a hilarious comedy duo, and the best goddamn pizza on the planet. It was there that my sisters, my mom, my dad, and I became the first 5 members of the church that my dad called Carpenters. Now at this point, maybe you're thinking, Tommy, that's a lot of religion in your life. And you're right, our entire lives growing up centered around the church. I could write a book or a movie or a documentary on what it's like to be a PK, but if you really want to know what it's like, as Maz Kanata would say, that's a good question for another time, so fast forward. As we grew up, so did the church. By the time I graduated high school, the church was large enough and had enough money to complete construction on a building. It was my dad's proudest achievement. Sometime earlier, my grandparents were getting older and needed help with care, so they came to live with us in Nazareth. In 2007, Dad finally started to investigate the circumstances of his adoption. Unfortunately, at the time, the state of New York had sealed adoption records. Adoptees could only find their biological families if their birth parents had also joined a registry. Thanks to new legislation in November 2019, this is finally no longer the case. The response my father received from the New York Department of Health told him that he was born under the name James John Mayers. His mother was 24 and his father 30 at the time of his birth. His dad was in fact a merchant marine. He had 3 older siblings, 3 aunts and uncles that we'd never met. In 2008, we lost Grandma Grimes, and a few years later, we lost Grandpa too, the best people I'd ever known. Carrie had joined the Air Force Reserve as a flight medic. She deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. I joined the Pennsylvania Air National Guard and was studying film at Temple University. Stacy moved to the Midwest. She got married, and then unmarried. She went vegan. Then some stuff happened with the church. All I remember was there was a lot of drama. My dad was getting tired. Eventually, he was asked by the elders to resign. So my father left the church that he'd started, that he poured his entire life and legacy into, and they were forced to sell the house. Then, in December 2009, Mom rented a cabin in the Poconos, where the Grimes family reunited to share a rare Christmas together.
So I arranged for us to all have Christmas. It was like a week together in a lodge in the Poconos. And in that way, everybody could get to see how Dad was doing.
We were playing cards, and he was a very aggressive card player, playing Dutch Blitz, and he was very slow. And then we were playing hearts, and he couldn't keep the suits straight anymore.
The kids all noticed that he couldn't play cards. He couldn't really do numbers anymore. And Stacy and him went out, I think, to a movie, and she came back and she was like, "Oh, Mom, Dad's driving's just terrible." And I mean, I knew it, but I needed you guys to see it.
My dad was eventually diagnosed with early onset dementia at the age of 56. In the following years, Carrie got married. My dad got to walk her down the aisle in Hawaii. It was basically the last Grimes family vacation. Carrie had her first child, Vaden, and my dad got to meet him. Stacy moved back to Pennsylvania to finish college. I transferred into the 4th Combat Camera Squadron in the Air Force Reserve. I got hired at Apple and worked at a few different stores. Eventually, I met a cute girl on a rooftop in DTLA and chased her to New York City. In early 2015, my dad got worse, and we almost lost him. At that point, he needed 24-hour care. Later that year, during the holidays, the Grimes came together again, and after the new year, we got some more bad news.
You want the full version? Yep. I was laying naked in bed, and my boob. Do you remember this? Come on, Justine. I haven't drank that much. It's my first glass. We had decided we wanted to have a second child, and after having sex, I was laying naked in bed, and my boob flopped over, and I said, that's sticking up a bit. Is that a lump? And I pushed on it, and then I said, Steve, do you think that's a lump? And he said, well, let me check that out.
And you're okay with this going on YouTube?
And then he said, that is definitely a lump. You never go to the doctor. You're going to the doctor, and I don't want to hear anything about it. He told me it was indeed a lump, and that I was probably right. It was probably a cyst or a blocked milk duct from breastfeeding. And then I should get a mammogram and an ultrasound. And I got an ultrasound, and it said I needed a mammogram, or vice versa, I forget. And then they said I needed a biopsy. And then from seeing it was a biopsy, they said, uh-oh, it's cancer.
Carrie went through chemotherapy and kicked cancer's ass. Since then, she had another child and named her after our grandmother, Lila. And she's freaking adorable! As horrible as it was, if it wasn't for Carrie's cancer diagnosis, we would have never received a vital new clue about my father's background.
I have a BRCA1 mutation, specifically the Ashkenazi Jewish variant, which causes a high risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer.
With the knowledge that there must be some Jewish ancestry in our dad's background, I decided to finally finish his search for his biological family. I ordered 3 DNA tests and started documenting the process. I took the tests in April 2018. The next month, I sat down with my sisters in Philadelphia to read the results.
Oh,
34.4% Ashkenazi Jewish.
Whoa. Yep, that makes sense.
With the confirmation that our dad must have had at least one Jewish parent, it finally felt like we were starting to get answers. My dad was a man with Jewish ancestry from Nazareth, a carpenter, a preacher, from uncertain parentage. To solve the rest of the puzzle, it was going to take more work, more research, more time. I needed to dive into my matches and see if I can find any close living relatives of my father's. We knew he had 3 older siblings. I wanted to know if there was more to the story of his adoption. And I kept asking myself why it mattered so much to me to learn I had Jewish ancestry. It was time to dig further into my matches and see if by some miracle I could find something. Anything. Hey everyone, I wanted to apologize for falling a little bit behind on my vlogs over the holidays. It turns out making these videos about my family is a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be, but I'm going to keep at it. If you could comment, like, subscribe, all those good things, I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to find out what happens next in the story, you can hit that little notify button to find out when I have new videos online. I appreciate all the love and support I can get, and I will be seeing everyone again real soon.